Hey, welcome investors to the 40 Finance channel. Today I want to compare Pinterest versus Snap, two social media stocks. Very intriguing comparison between these companies. They have a similar stock price. They have similar favor with many investors, particularly young investors, as far as thinking about stocks that have momentum. And each one has a unique bull case and each one has a unique bear case. So we're going to put them together and I'm going to give you my price projection for both of these stocks heading into January of 2022. All right, so coming out of sort of lockdown mode with the pandemic, the future for both of these stocks is a little bit different. On the one side, you have Snapchat, which is more of a boots on the ground social media application where you meet up with friends on maps. But they did have some redeeming qualities during lockdown as people needed to communicate from afar. Then you have Pinterest, who you could argue that the future is a little less bright because during COVID and the lockdown, you had more people using the platform. And here recently, Pinterest has seen sort of their engagement metrics go down a little bit. Their monthly active users barely ticked up over last year. And general growth in the United States has kind of come to a stall point. Meanwhile, on Snapchat's side, when it comes to users, their users are growing. Now, both of these companies have a lot of opportunity in international markets. So I would say on the United States side, Snapchat probably has the advantage on user growth, but internationally, both of these platforms have opportunities to continue to grow. Now, beyond just user growth, if we think about revenue growth and profitability, Snapchat has more revenue and they're growing revenue at a faster pace. However, they are just now on the cusp of profitability, whereas Pinterest is coming into a new cycle with their business. Obviously, it's a more mature business. Pinterest has been around longer than Snapchat. And what Pinterest is starting to do is actually produce a decent EPS for their shareholders. And in addition to just earnings per share, they're also growing the top line as well. Not as fast as Snapchat, but every dollar that Pinterest is growing on the revenue side is actually translating into earnings on the bottom line. So between these two stocks, we definitely have sort of a different value proposition for investors right here, right now. And to top things off, they're both at different places in terms of like 52-week highs. Because Pinterest has shown a little bit of a stumble in user growth, they're actually on a low momentum side of things right now where they've seen their stock price come down, which obviously if you're a buy the dip type mentality, which I typically am, you could make the argument that Pinterest is undervalued. In fact, the fair value for both of these companies in Morningstar is right about $70 or $72. We got Pinterest today at 57 and we have Snapchat at 72. So Snapchat's on the high momentum side and some would argue maybe not as much room to run in their stock price. We're going to dig into the fundamentals and try to figure out which one makes the most sense heading into January of 2022. All right, let's take a quick look at the basics and the historical valuations of these companies. Snap, you see, this is Friday around lunchtime, trading at $73. This is a stock that has been on the stock market longer than Pinterest, but the company as a whole is younger than Pinterest. And what we have with Snap is a company, like I said, that's right on the cusp of profitability. So we only really have a couple annual reports for forward PE, at least on Yahoo. You had a 384 in 2020, and you had a 256 where things stand today. Now, from a price to sales perspective, Snap is actually at a pretty high peak, at least for them. You got 32x as of today, And if you looked back a couple years, 2018, 2019, it was certainly cheaper at those times. Scroll down here a little bit and look at our financials. $3.34 billion in the last 12 months for Snap. They have $3.47 billion in the bank, which is nice, and a debt load of about $3 billion. So what you're going to see here when we look at Pinterest is that Snap has much higher debt. They do, though, have enough cash in the bank to cover that debt, particularly when this revenue line is projected to grow like it is. Taking a quick look at our short percentage of float, 3.81% for Snap, so not a lot of short interest on this one. All right, let's do the same exercise for Pinterest. Again, Pinterest, older company, it is actually producing profits, earnings per share, forward PE, lot lower here, 57.14. Last year, it snuck in under 100, and a few years ago, it was around 200. When we go down and look at their financial, you have $2.25 billion over the last 12 months. That's about $1 billion less than Snap did. Then you have $2 billion in the bank, and you have a total debt of only $121 million. So again, debt-wise, Pinterest has the advantage. Revenue-wise, both in the trailing 12 months, and we're going to look ahead here in just a second, Snap is producing more revenue and is projected to produce more revenue over the long term. All right, now staying with Pinterest, we're going to look ahead to the future. Then we'll compare that with Snap. So on Seeking Alpha here, we'll go down to this table view of analyst estimates for the next several fiscal years. We're really just going to concern ourselves with the next couple. At the end of this year, fiscal period ending December 2021, you have a consensus estimate of 106. That puts your forward PE at about 54. And you can see that EPS growth, phenomenal at 152%. And we've got 19 analysts chiming in and a high of about $1.24. Now, 2022 is the year I'm going to be more interested in for my price projections because I always want to be looking forward. So I'm always trying to project like a forward PE, forward price to sales, those kinds of things. So this 2022 is important. The consensus right now is $1.39. That's 30% growth year over year. However, we have a much larger high at this point because people are projecting further out at 194. And behind the scenes, I did a little work comparing how often Pinterest has beaten their earnings and at what percentage. And I'll tell you that my EPS projection for them when we get to the prices is going to be about $1.70. I think they clear 139 by a mile. All right, so let's check out our revenue and price to sales. So with Pinterest, you have a company that's producing profits. They're producing EPS. So their price to sales, it needs to come down into a more reasonable level because we have an idea of what the company can actually do. And so you'll notice when we get to Snap that these are much lower valuation lines. December of 2021, the estimate $2.62 billion plus 54% growth. Forward price to sales about 14. Next year, revenue $3.45 billion, 31% growth. Again, I think that this number is low. I think it's held down by the consensus average. So I'll have a higher target here. And forward price to sales of 10.69. All right, let's take a look at the same thing for Snap. This year, 2021, 35 cents. You got the not measurable here because last year they had nothing, okay? Forward PE, and from that perspective, is 202. 2022, consensus right now is at 79 cents. That's a big growth year for them EPS-wise, and frankly, I think they beat it. You can see the wide range of analysts' opinions here. 23 ranging from 50 cents to $1.16. I'm on the side that it'll go higher, and I'm putting this estimate at $1 for my projections. Let's take a look at revenue, price to sales, which comes into play with Snap because we're not expecting to invest in this company completely for profit. Now, in my book, it's excellent that they are producing more profits. They're non-GAAP EPS, I'm guessing, but it shows that the company's maturing, and ultimately, you run a company to make money. So if you're not making money, I'm not sure how good of a company it is. But they've got that ticked off. But the bigger thesis for Snap really is how big can this company get over the next 3 to 5 years? And they've got some hefty numbers that analysts are looking at. So December 2021, $4.2 billion. If analyst consensus were correct on both of the companies we're studying today, Pinterest would come in 2.4 billion. Snap would come in at 4.2. And at 4.2, you got a forward price to sales of today's price at 26.88. So hovering in the 30s, which is definitely the high end of what we're seeing in the market today. So I would say that this is a risk number at this level, and it needs to come down. Luckily for Snap, looking ahead to 2022, when they get out of this earnings call for the fiscal year, somewhere in January or February of 2022, we can start projecting the full year guidance. Right now it sits at about 6.2 billion. You see the range of analysts. I think that this goes up from here and brings the forward price to sales down even more after we get through Q3 and Q4. All right, before I share my projections, let's see what the pros on Wall Street are saying using TipRanks here. It's a link for TipRanks in the description if you are interested in learning more through my affiliate link. And it looks like about a 50-50 mix between holds and buys. If we just pick off the first couple on this list, you got a 68, 68, 77, 74, 70. So about a 20 to maybe 30% on the high end upside projected for Pinterest. Okay, now let's take a look at Snap. Same thing. Earnings call was last month. So you're seeing the same sort of update time frame. And right off the bat, you do have a sell with 8.61% downside. But outside of the sell and 2 holds, I would argue that we have mostly buys here for Snap, and the ones that are bullish see prices 81, 88, 88. So potentially still some more room in Snap going forward. Keep in mind that all these TipRanks analysts are projecting for 1 year out from today. So they're essentially looking ahead in August of 2022. Now with my price projections, I'm shortening the time frame, and I'm talking about February of 2022 after this fiscal year ends and is reported on, if you can follow that. Okay, so here's my take on these 2 stocks looking ahead to January of 2022. Pinterest is at 57. I think their 2022 EPS projection will eventually rise to $1.70. They'll have a forward price to earnings, a reasonable one at about 48. And revenue, I have it coming in about 3.7 billion, which is on the high side of today's analysts, 667 a share. If you take 170 by 48, then you get a price of $82 for February-ish of 2022. That's plus 44% from today's level of 53. All right, now on the Snap side of things. Price today of 72. 2022 EPS projection by the time we get to February, I think analysts and myself will be projecting about $1 for fiscal year 2022. I think that enables the forward price to earnings to come down roughly half where it is today at a 98. So simple math, dollar times 98 is a price of 98 plus 36% from $72 today. Now, revenue-wise, I could see them hitting $6.5 billion easily, particularly with the pace that they're on now. And of course, assuming they have a great fourth quarter with holiday shopping and all that, I think that your forward price to sales needs to come down from the 30s, right? So even though this number is going up big, it ends up being about $4.88 per share in earnings, times that by about 20, and you get the price of 98. So with Snap, I'm saying the multiple is coming down. I'm saying the company will do well, but the multiple for the company will come down. It's awfully high right now. Okay, so interesting stock comparison, I feel like. With Pinterest, under my models, you got about plus 44% from today's price. Snap, on the other hand, plus 36%. Now, Snap, in my opinion, stronger momentum, stronger revenue case. Pinterest, on the other hand, much lower momentum, potentially concerns over revenue growth, but exploding profitability. Now, these projections are only the next few months through February or so, right? So if I was a long-term investor and I was going to go 3 to 5 years, I think I would probably choose Snap, but I would likely wait for the price to come down through a market correction or some other event. I just feel like it's fully valued now. It's not necessarily overly expensive. Looking ahead for the long term, though, I think Snap's future is much brighter than Pinterest. Both of them are stuck in this quandary of being a single platform and how many tricks can you tie into one platform before you need to expand. However, I think Snap has the advantage in what kind of tricks they can pull within their platform. A lot of it with virtual reality, a lot of it with the camera designs that they can put on the phone and how they continue to expand camera technology. I just like where the company's going from a growth prospect over 3 to 5 years. But if you want safe and solid EPS growth, Pinterest is definitely an option. All right, guys, so that's my comparison of Snap versus Pins. Hope you enjoyed it. Please give me a like, subscribe to the channel, all the things. Thanks as always for your support. We'll see you on the next video.